Okay, if any, can everybody see that? And if you want to move over to this side, you can. If you're comfortable where you are, that's fine with me too. It's not going to bother me. I like the movie. You know, I do. The only criticism I have of the movie is they seem to think it was all interdimensional, or from one dimension to another, which I believe that's happening. It's spiritual realm. But there's also some physical things happening to some people. If somebody has a terrible experience and they have physical marks on them, or they have, you know, some horrible thing has happened to them, I don't think you should really tell them it didn't happen.
Right.
So this is going to, I'm going to give you, we did talk a little bit about Genesis 6 last time, and I'm going to focus more on that this time, because I'm going to, my angle to this, not disproving any of the spiritual realm, it is spiritual, but I'm going to show you where there could be some physical entities involved as well.
Yes.
That's what I hope to show you. And just for recommendation, I think everybody, that movie that was shown today, Alien Intrusion, is very good. I don't agree with absolutely everything, but I know if you agree with absolutely everything, you probably need to switch the channel occasionally. Okay, and Black is Beautiful is certainly good. And you've got some films on the Giants, which are very good too. One of the things Pastor Dan and I are trying to do is put together like a bibliography or a resource list for books and films and YouTube videos, and, you know, from different opinions to, be they secular, Christians, and there's different views with Christians to have on things too. Of course, if you've been saved a long time, you know that, you know. I always say it's a good thing that we agree on salvation usually, because we fight about everything else. But anyway, so let's just get into that. This is called Supernatural Realities. It's about aliens and the UFO phenomenon. All right. Any study of Lucifer, I'm going to have to get into a better position here. Any study of Lucifer and his kingdom necessitates prayer and caution. Satan applauds those who deny his existence. He is equally satisfied with persons who are fascinated in his power. In other words, don't become obsessed with any particular aspect of the devil. And I don't think there's anything good about UFOs. I don't really think there's anything good, and certainly I don't think there's anything good about people who have been abducted. I don't think good things have happened to them. I think it can happen to good people.
Right.
Okay. And at any time, if somebody wants a question or something, this can be participatory. You can ask me a question. And I would like to say, this PowerPoint, all you have to do is ask me for it, and I'll send it to you. The same thing you're seeing right here. The term alien abduction or abduction phenomenon describes people's real memories of being taken secretly against one's will by apparently non-human entities and subjected to complex physical and psychological procedures. People claiming to have been abducted are usually called abductees or experiencers. Typical claims involve people being subjected to forced medical examinations that emphasize abductee reproductive systems. Abductees sometimes claim to have been warned against environmental abuse and dangers of nuclear weapons. I put that on there just to show, because I anticipate this PowerPoint going to ministries, preachers who need to have something in their arsenal to help people if they come in and want to talk about it. That's what the purpose of this is. Good. So it's sort of introductory, and then it rapidly moves on to a higher college class. Mainstream scientists reject the claims that alien abductions literally occur as reported. However, there's little doubt that many apparently stable persons who report alien abductions believe their experiences were real. And Harvard University has done several studies on it. This one was from '92. This particular guy said 60 cases he examined of these abductees. He worked on them, and then after a battery of psychological tests, here's his findings. And this is typical of what fair, objectional psychologists find. No psychiatric or psychosocial explanation for these reports is evident. These people are not mentally ill. The majority of abductees do not appear to be deluded. Confabulating, that's a big word for making your memories, turning your memory into facts. Lying, self-dramatizing, or suffering from a clear mental illness. In other words, these are normal people it's happened to. Right. In fact, think of the most credible guy or lady you know. Somebody you just trust. And then imagine them 3 or 4 days from now telling you they were abducted. That's what people are faced with. You know, and I've never been abducted or anything like that, but I'm not going to ignore people's stories just because it seems out there. You know, I'm not gullible either, but this is what we're trying to do. We're going to look at this in light of biblical evidence. This lecture considers UFO alien abductions. For purpose of this study, aliens are defined as intelligent life forms other than human beings. Does the Bible mention UFOs and there are aliens? Are there any scriptural connections providing credibility to UFO human abduction? Here, they referred to this in the film too. This is the Roper study. It was done in 1992. It's been done since, but again, it's typical. It suggested that nearly 4 million Americans reported experiences akin to alien abduction. That's a lot of people. I mean, that's a lot. Get rid of 90% of them, and it's a lot of people. There's still tens of thousands of people that you just can't, you know, just rationalize away. In fact, it's irrational not to believe some of them.
Right.
Here's what we know. According to the Bible, spirit-type creatures exist and have interacted with the human race. Some of these spirit beings have the ability to inhabit humans, devils, possession, and even animal life. If you've read the Bible, you know that has happened. So, I accept the Bible as fact. You know, we might not agree on every verse, interpret it the same way, but the Bible's true. And the Bible records this. The Bible also records in the days of Noah, some angels left their habitation in heaven, crossed over into a human environment, and cohabitated with women. This resulted in procreating an offspring of giants. Both angels and giants fit the definition of aliens. They're not humans, but they're out there. Now, the Bible... This is one of my criticism with the film, is they didn't even mention this.
Right, right.
You know? And it's pretty clear what's happening in Genesis 6. Anybody can read it for themselves. And scripture with scripture, you can prove that these are angels that took human women. It's like a lot of things in the Bible. And I'm not ashamed to say this. The Bible is often not hard to understand. The Bible's hard to believe sometimes, you know? I mean, do you believe in Noah's Ark? How many believe in Noah's Ark? Well, that's quite a story. Amen? That's quite a story. I mean, I went to a secular university, and if I said I believed in Noah's Ark, which I did and do, I just lost all credibility. All right, but we believe that, so that's good. We do not know how many angels were involved. Nor do we know how the angels introduced themselves to human beings. No doubt their entrance onto the world stage was impressive. Do you think angels employed signs and lying wonders when making contact with humans? Just a question you need to answer to yourself. Why are the days of Noah even relevant to this discussion? With nearly unanimous agreement, and this is spectacular in and of itself, Christians interpret Jesus' statements below as explaining conditions on earth just prior to his second advent. In other words, the verses are prophecy. Here's the verses. But as the days of Noah, that's the Greek spelling for the word Noah, were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. In other words, most people interpret that as saying, Jesus said, they are asking, well, hey, what's it going to be like when you come back? And Jesus says, I'll tell you what it's going to be like. It's going to be like the days of Noah. So what were the days of Noah like? That's what Christians have to come up with on them for themselves to answer these questions. What does Jesus mean by saying as it was in the days of Noah? What do you think that means? Does Jesus refer only to mankind's morality? Does Jesus refer to science and technology? Do modern world's nations, political and religious ambitions mirror Noah's world? Does Jesus mean angels cross over into the human realm again? I've studied this out. I say yes to all of that. Right. I think Noah's generation was far more advanced than we give him credit for. Amen. You know, people say, well, how come we don't find any evidence of that? Well, let me tell you. Look, the Noah's flood, if you figure it out mathematically, it was like 400 inches an hour's worth of rain. I mean, it's just standing outside that would kill you from the force of the water. There's no swimming up to the ark and knocking on the door. So, if it rained that hard, and most of the earth stayed underwater after that.
That's right.
So and it's easier to walk on the moon than it is to go 2 miles under the water. Did you know that? It's easier to go to the moon than it is to go 2 miles under the ocean to the ocean's depth. The pressures are just recently they've had drones and stuff that can go deeper. But so my point is, if there was a civilization that's 5 miles underwater and buried by 3 miles worth of mud, you're not finding it. You know? So that answers that question.
Yeah.
This is part 2. That was our introduction. And if somebody doesn't know the Bible or anything that well, or a preacher wants to get acquainted with it, that's what it's for. All right. Here's Genesis 6, days of Noah. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God, and those are the angels, saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now, if you were to get this, there's notes on the right alongside this, if you were just looking on it on your computer screen, and it would prove to you the sons of God are also angels, if it isn't clear to you. Men of renown means to be famous or widely acclaimed. They're very influential leaders. And also after that parenthetical statement, it means it happens again. What did this look like? Why would angels do this? It didn't look like this. Every time an angel shows up in the Bible, it's a man without wings.
Right.
Every time.
Right.
And it's the idea that an angel has wings or an angel is sexless, as in no gender, is just not true. It's myth. So there's another picture what it didn't look like. It looked more like that.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is it looked more normal.
Yeah.
All right? Or it looked like that. That's a movie, City of Angels, where that Nicolas Cage is an angel, and he comes down to earth and he decides to be human forever, and he falls in love. Isn't that nice? Here's a thought to ponder. And this is important. Maybe if you get nothing else from this, get this. Hollywood and science fiction and the world in general are fascinated by Bible stories as long as they can control the setting. In other words, they reject the context and biblical narrative of facts. Although some basic biblical truth is used in their productions, they surround the stories with fiction. They do this all the time. The unholy copulation between human women and fallen angels produced an offspring of giants, an organism which is a mixture of human and angel DNA, an entirely new life form in rebellion against God. See, what I want to do is start to put words on it that are more biological.
Right.
Theory. Angels procreated or produced only the first generation of giants. Consequently, most of the giants were fathered by the giants. Observing a degenerating process over the centuries supports this theory. The further away generations get from angels, giants get smaller and less intelligent. Consider Og and Goliath. Those are probably two of the famous people that were big in the Bible.
Yes.
All right. Og, he was the king of Bashan. He was over 12 feet tall. Og was slain around 1490 BC. There's your references for him. Goliath, he's 9.5 feet tall. He lived 450 years after Og, killed around 1000 BC. That, that's three and a half feet difference. Goliath is shorter. Now, that's quite a difference. That's quite a difference. All right, there's the references. Here's the big guy on the far right here. That's Og. Goliath would be the number 2. The number 3 guy would be a NBA basketball player today. And the last guy would be us. Somebody 6 feet tall, 5'10", 5'11". That's the difference in sizes. I just put that there to show you the difference. You know, I think I mentioned this last time, but I was in a restaurant in Detroit. I'm from Detroit, in the Detroit area. And we were eating, and the Pistons came in. About 4 or 5 of the Pistons came in. That's a showstopper, man. Right. You ever seen anybody 7 feet tall? Right. 7 feet. Right. Well, I'm 6'2". Right. I'm not a showstopper. You know? They said my face could stop a train, but that's not what they meant. But a showstopper, just 10 inches more, man, puts you in a whole different league. Right. So that's the NBA guy, is there the second little guy. Then there's Goliath. And then there's Og. You're not walking around 12.5 feet tall unnoticed. All right. As this is part of the theory, my theory, as genetic nearness to the angels become more distant, giants become smaller and less intelligent. Og is a king, Goliath is a champion. In fact, the Bible never even calls Goliath a giant. Here's something interesting. Some of you Bible thumpers will check this out. Only people retelling the story do. Scripture declaring only Og remained a remnant of the giants means Goliath cannot be a giant in technical doctrinal sense. In other words, Goliath was not fathered directly by an angel, he was fathered by a giant. Deuteronomy, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. 450 years later, and there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits in a span. It's 9.5 feet. We're going to make a big deal out of this. But there is more wrong with this ancient world than human and angelic wickedness. God repents for having made animal life. As discriminating Bible students, we need to ask, why is God sorry he made the animals? And the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Well, what did the animals do? Is that a fair question? Yes. Theory. Noah's flood was God's direct response to fallen angels corrupting biologically the DNA of human beings and animals to procreate new species. This explains why God segregated and preserved selected animals on the ark. In the days of Noah, science engaged in genetic experimentation with animals, and something went wrong. The sons of God intervening with human science corrupted God's creation. God took drastic measures to ensure a pure, uninfected human and animal life survived by segregating and preserving them on Noah's Ark. God says all flesh is corrupt, not just human. There's actually a verse that says all flesh is not the same flesh, for there is one kind of flesh of man, angels, birds, and so on. It's not all the same. God says all flesh is corrupt. Notice God blames a mysterious group referred to as them for the problems. The them are the fallen angels. The earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Here's something I want you to think about. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations. Well, what's God mean by that? And Noah walked with God. That verse associates the word perfect with the word generation. The word generation deals with Noah's genetic purity. I just want you to think about this. Thus, the word generation, in this case, is dealing with genes and or genetic structure. This correlates with God declaring all flesh is corrupt. Therefore, I conclude God preserved only genetically unaltered animals on the ark. The word generations is made from the word root, or root word, gen, which means after birth or kind. A word root contains the main meaning of a word, but it cannot stand by itself. You all know this from grade school, probably. By adding prefixes and suffixes to a word root, new words are made. Hence the words gene, genetics, generation. Right. And he put them on that boat. Now that's quite a story.
Amen.
But I believe it.
Amen.
He said one thing, even if you don't believe what I just said, one thing sure, God segregated certain animals on that boat. Right. And Noah didn't go out and get them either. Right. God communicated to the animals to come to him. Right. So they came to him, and he put them on that boat for a reason. With Noah's flood came another victory for Satan. And you figure out the population of the earth at that time, there was about the same population of the earth as there is now.
Yes.
The destruction of billions of human beings. When the waters subsided, a new age began. Satan sought corruption of the new world through his own adopted ones, the giants. Infiltrating the descendants of Canaan, these are the stories that you'll read about in Joshua, in Moses, you know, that's Goliath's era. He reduced these peoples to a state rivaling Noah's generation. The land beyond the Jordan endured total defilement. By this time, God dealt with their abominations before they infected the whole world. Within times, giants realized the futility and continued war with God's people. Life on earth is no longer tolerable for giants, so they hide under the sea or deep inside the earth or on another planet. It's a theory. That's from that book, Angels, Giants, and Things Under the Earth. I wrote that book. All right, part 3, Satan's logic. Satan's goals were to replace God with scientific achievement and alternative gods. And again, I believe the days of Noah were much more elaborate and sophisticated than people think they were. And procreate animal life forms in rebellion against God with the biological capacity to reproduce. In the days of Noah, an already highly advanced society, with the help of supernatural intellect, carried out genetic experiments. Under laboratory conditions, tampering with man's and animals' DNA procreates astounding results. It happened in the past, and it happens in the future. In fact, in many ways, it's happening right now. If this is all sounding a bit much, let the reader examine Revelation chapter 9 with utmost scrutiny. Notice Apostle John describes 2 specific armies. These creatures are not the armies of the Chinese, nor are they the attempted description of modern weaponry by John. These things are genetically confused organisms which compose devil armies right from the pit of hell. And if that were not enough, these devils are led by angels.
Right.
Again, I want to tell you, the Bible's not hard to understand, it's hard to believe. Right. Army number 1 is led by an angel named Apollyon, king of the bottomless pit. The demonic hosts are confused organisms which contain body parts from the following: locusts, horses, men, women, lions, and scorpions. Read carefully these descriptions. How do you suppose they got in this condition? Do you think God created them this way? Army number 2 is apparently from the pit also, released from an opening in the Euphrates River. There are 200 million of these things. Something often overlooked, each creature carries a devil rider, bringing their total number to 400 million. Observe, this army is led by 4 angels. The devil horse-like creatures are composed of the following animals: horses, lions, serpents, and tails with heads. Their riders are not described, simply called them that sat in them. Again, the Bible student should wonder how these creatures got into this condition. And this is the verses that I've referred to. You open the bottomless pit, and this big cloud comes out, and creatures come out, and verse 3, there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth has power. Here's the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared to battle. And their heads were like crowns of gold. Their faces were as the faces of men. They had hair as the hair of women. Their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle, and they had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Now, you think God made those things? Like that? Is that a fair question?
Right.
Do those look like genetically confused organisms to you?
Amen.
They do to me. And this is the other army. Loose the 4 angels, which are bound. They're tied up. That means they are bad. And the 4 angels were loose, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year to slay a third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. There's your 200 million. And I heard the number of them, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and jacinth and brimstone. The heads of the horses were the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the third part of man killed, by the fire, by the smoke, and by the brimstone. And I can see somebody saying, well, that might be a metaphor for weaponry, but not the rest of it, which issued out of their mouths for their powers in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. There's an attempted description of something. I'll tell you what, you read the book of Revelation and believe it literally, it's twice the horror story.
Amen.
Then you try to make it a metaphor for everything, believe it literally, and it's a real nightmare.
Amen.
Okay? Age of genetics. Now we're in, clearly I've already presented that I think the days of Noah, they were just as modern as we are, and they had some of the same issues. Just as history identifies a previous time as the Industrial Revolution, and more recently the computer age, the present era is being hailed as an age of genetics.
Right.
Science has entered a new age of biological possibilities. Where will this take us? Are human beings playing God? Things sounding like science fiction a few years ago revealed today's reality. Altering DNA, growing human organs inside animals,
Right.
cloning, test tube babies, granting patents for new life forms. That one right there, that's a trip.
Right.
All this and more takes place today. Many people believe science is on the verge of eliminating birth defects, neurological disorders, even slowing down, if not stopping, the aging process. Now let me say something. I don't think everything with genetic research is bad. Okay? I do not think everything is being done with bad intent. People, we know what everybody's trying to do. Everybody's trying to get back to the Garden of Eden. Everybody's trying to, nobody wants to die. Everybody wants to live forever in good health.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
But they try and do it without God.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's not happening. Living organisms were always considered as discoveries of nature and unpatentable. You know what I mean by a patent? Okay? But in 1980, in the landmark case of Diamond versus Chakrabarty, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the living organism, a bacterium that could digest crude oil and oil spills, could be patented. The court observed that patents can only be granted when living products could be seen as human-made inventions. All right, that was the first one that was ever patented. It's for oil spills. This guy made a bug, and when there's an oil spill in the ocean, you release this bacteria, and it eats the oil. I remember the conversation with Congress. There used to be a C-SPAN channel. I don't know if it's still out there. And one congressman asked, well, what if these things, what happens when the oil's gone? The guy said, Dow Chemistry or something. He said, well, it dies. The guy said, well, what if it doesn't? What if it starts eating fish? I thought it was pretty funny. Current headlines. I want you to consider these in light of this. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Well, knowledge has been increased, folks. As a result of the developments in the underlying science and technologies, biotechnology is able to modify any form of life in ways that seem to be limited only to the imagination or the market. Biotechnology has produced genetically modified microorganisms for purposes ranging from toxic waste cleanup to the production of medicine. That's from the Encyclopedia of Science and Religion in 2003. You will hear on the news, probably this year, that they're almost there. I feel they're this close to increasing the human lifespan to like 130 years old. They're not kidding. You know, old age is a disease. There's not a scientist or a doctor alive that can tell you why you get old. Your cells regenerate every 7 years. You should reach an age of maturity and just stay there. And that's how God intended it, when you think about it. You know? And remember what he said to Adam and Eve when he said, God said, we got to get these people out of here? Why? Lest they eat from the tree and live forever. You know what that means? That means there's some biological component to the tree of life, a drug, if you will, that when ingested by a lost human being can stop the aging process. Am I off track? Well, they're getting close to it. The genetic engineering of plants and animals is looming as one of the greatest and most intractable environmental challenges of the 21st century. 92% of U.S. corn is genetically engineered. 94% of soybeans, and 94% of cotton. And those three products are in almost everything. It has been estimated that upwards of 75% of processed foods on the supermarket shelves, from soda pop to soup, crackers to condiments, contain genetically engineered ingredients. I challenge you to go home and look in your own cupboard. Try and find something that's not genetically modified. And again, I am not saying it's all bad. I'm not saying they're not doing it for the best of reasons. In fact, if scientists and geneticists hadn't gotten involved with the food crop, there's no way 1.5% of the population could feed 7 billion people. There's just no way. So some of this is good, but it comes with problems. Knowledge is a two-edged sword. Biological diversity is undergoing a dangerous wave of privatization under the label of intellectual property rights. Through the patenting of plants, animals, genes, and smaller parts of DNA, a biological patent is a patent relating to an invention in biology. And there's thousands of them now. Scientists, this is a reel from CBS News, scientists create alien life form with artificial genetic code. Scientists made a substantial breakthrough in understanding how to alter the fundamental nature of life. And they did so by creating for the first time a partially artificial life form that passes along lab-engineered DNA. Now that ought to bother you. Scientists create new life form in lab. The work has been able to lay the foundation of achieving the central goal of synthetic biology, the creation of new life forms and functions. It's from The Guardian, 2017. For as long as life on Earth has existed, all of it has been made up of only 4 letters. DNA has been written in just those 4 letters, G, T, C, and A, which together create the code that underlies every living thing ever known. That's until now. Scientists have announced that they have created living organisms using an expanded genetic code that could in turn lead to the creation of entirely new life forms, using combinations of DNA that couldn't possibly have existed before. Unless we go back to the days of Noah. Organs for human transplant are being grown inside sheep and pigs. We don't have enough organs for transplant, but it's not as though governments and scientists are sitting back idly. Incentives to encourage donation are being considered and urged. And various labs are working on succeeding in creating organs from stem cells. But in growing human organs in animals, a step too far. That's currently being debated after an MIT technology review revealed that at least 3 groups in the US are doing just that. What's happening in Japan, China, Korea, or Europe is anybody's guess. But say what you will about America. In spite of all our problems, we're still the most honest government in the world by far. And I'm not saying we don't have nasty secrets.
Right.
But you're nothing compared to China and Japan. The controversial technique involves the creation of so-called chimeras. There's a word you're going to hear again. Mixtures between humans and farm animals. Although the work is yet to be published, the information gathered by MIT from the scientists themselves indicates that roughly 20 successful pregnancies were established in either pigs or sheep last year, but all were terminated before reaching full term. I say, think about that for a while. Here's what happened. I read the whole article. They have mixed the DNA, and they created a new species, and they put it into an embryo, and they're growing it. The pregnancy, it was conceived, and they're growing it inside the animal. About halfway through the pregnancy, some scientists said, you know what? We can't be sure this isn't affecting the brains of these things that are going to be born. In other words, am I going to have a sheep thing that talks or can think like a human being? They terminated the pregnancies because it looked like there was too much brain activity for an animal. Creating these species fusions, I love the words these guys use, involves both the use of stem cells and gene editing, both of which have progressed massively in recent years. First off, scientists tweak the DNA inside sheep or pig cells so that the developing embryo lacks certain organs or tissues. These ordinarily wouldn't survive, but scientists have demonstrated it's possible to help them develop by adding normal cells from a different embryo, which fill in the gaps. Scientists have already been adding human genes to pig and DNA to make animals organs for you. Some have expressed concerns over such humanization of animals, in particular regarding the effects on their cognitive abilities, that's their brains. But currently, we still don't even know whether the resulting animals would be viable. That's just a code word for, are they going to be alive and stupid, or are they going to be alive and smart? Are they going to be alive and have souls? Nor the extent of human cell contribution, as institutions only permitted by the research if the developing animals were terminated at an early stage. In other words, you can develop them so far, but then you got to abort them. Which really says something about abortion if you stop and think about it. However, privately funded labs are not subject to governmental oversight. And never underestimate the power of capitalism. Somebody's going to come up with something, if they already haven't. Thought to ponder. The only animal in the Bible that devils chose to possess were pigs. It's amazing how much is compatible with a human body with a pig. So the devil's beside him, saying, if thou cast us out, suffer us to go away into the herd of swine. Remember that story? Well, maybe the devils knew more than we did. Thought to ponder. The animals God chose to represent believers are sheep. Know ye that the Lord, He is God, and He that made us, and not we ourselves. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. Just something I showed you this last time. This is the Belgian super cow. Twice, 2.5 times bigger than it should be. That's a lot. You're eating this now. Let's compare the size. That's the spider goat. They took genes from a spider and a goat, and they created a new species called spider goat. And you can Google this to find out anything. Like I say, you can have this. Just ask me for it. I'm on Facebook. I'll send you the whole PowerPoint. And why did they do it? Well, they did it because a lot of people make nice sweaters and shirts out of goat's hair. Did you know that? Yarn? Goat's yarn? Well, this yarn has got the strength of a spider's web. The strongest silk on earth is weaved from a spider, and so they just said, well, why can't we get that elasticity in that spider web and the strength of that spider web into a goat hair? Yeah. And they did it. Well, there she is. Oh, and there's chickens without feathers. And I mean, why grow them if you can't? If you have to pluck them? So they engineered a way so chickens grow without feathers. Everybody's eating those too, everywhere. And
Finger looking good.
I'm just look what we're looking at here. If you want an analogy of how far genetics have come till now, you're looking. If we compare it to cars, you're looking at the Model T and the Model A. I mean, we're so far beyond this, it's not even funny. United Nations. The International Declaration on Human Genetic Data Research. And let's just jump down to the red. As each person's genetic heritage is unique, forensic science and the judicial system, that was important to me because I'm a chaplain from federal systems, are also in use for them for identification purposes. So not only is the United Nations involved with the genetics, never fear, they'll take care of you, they're also looking for ways to identify people. Starting with the prisoners and old people first, and He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hands or in their foreheads. There's the chip, and that's how they get it in your hand, your forehead. Now, that might not be it. I'm no prophet, but if I was a betting man, there's your chip. And that's a credit card. And they're going to do away with money in your lifetime, if you're if you're under 65. Could genetic engineering, here's a question. This is what I want
Well, that's Obama's health care. You got to have a chip in.
Yeah, he did propose that. You're right. I should have put that in here. This is a question I want to ask you. Could genetic engineering provide devils or other spiritual entities a permanent host? In other words, a physical body. Rather like an attempt to achieve what the angels did in Genesis 6. If this was possible, it could explain the alleged existence of aliens, greys, reptilians, hybrid, humanoids, etc. Artificial intelligence isn't necessarily always artificial. We know what did the angels do? They crossed over and became human beings somehow. Maybe they're doing something else to get around a loophole. A host created in a laboratory could serve as a living body of flesh without a functioning brain until it's infused with a spirit being. This would explain the physical examinations commonly reported by UFO abductees. Perhaps the aliens or the devil's real interest concerns human reproduction, which I think it does. That comes up over and over again. And I don't know how you could say it's just the spirit realm and with them interested in those areas of the body.
Right, right.
That sounds a little more concrete
Yeah.
to me, if you know what I mean. Sodom and Gomorrah connection. This is kind of fascinating. And you know, when I started this, I didn't want to, good look, sin to me, if you miss heaven, because you don't go to heaven because you don't take Jesus Christ as your Savior, whatever sin you're pet to, it doesn't matter to me really that much, you know, in the big picture. So I'm not zeroing in on a particular people. I don't want you to think that. You know, that's not an apology, but it's just the fact. Because sometimes Christians do that, you know.
Right.
They think, well, I'm not, you know, and take it from me. Have you ever noticed the sin that you don't do is the worst one?
Right.
You ever noticed that?
Right.
Okay. All right. Peter and Jude discuss a group of angels. This is just where the evidence takes us, whose behavior resulted in judgment and incarceration in hell. This is very interesting because Satan and his angels are presently free to roam the first and second heavens. Satan and his angels receive judgment at the great white throne judgment, which does not take place until after the millennium, and that's at least 1,007 years from now. While these particular angels are in hell thousands of years ahead of schedule. These very angels are defined as those who left their habitation and their first estate. Therefore, logical thinking concludes these angels are the sons of God who married human women in Genesis 6, or the days of Noah. What other conclusion is even possible? That's something for you to ask yourself. And the angels, here's the verse. This isn't my words now, this is God's. And the angels, which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah. Now that's pretty weird to say that. And the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Notice the comparison, even as, in Jude 1:7, to Sodom and Gomorrah. All things in the physical world represent some kind of spiritual truth. God compared certain aspects of the days of Noah to Sodom and Gomorrah. And Sodom and Gomorrah are not in the days of Noah. Right? That's why we have to study. This is where the evidence led. Going after strange flesh in Genesis 6 were males taking human women. Angel males. In the days of Lot, strange flesh was human males with human males. It's strange. Just weird. I don't care what anybody says. For if God spared not the angel, here's from Peter, and if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into the chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. Now remember, Satan and his angels right now are free to roam all over the place. What did these angels do? And he spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. And this doesn't, that's a semicolon. That means the sentence isn't even over. And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes and condemned them with an overthrow, making them an ensample unto those that should live ungodly. There's a connection. Apostle Peter makes the same association with Sodom and Gomorrah in the days of Noah. Clearly, God is making a point about strange flesh and rebellion. It's important to realize that Jude and Peter are not commenting on the whole societal condition, but rather one element. I mention this because many persons think of only one thing when they remember Sodom and Gomorrah. God gives a more complete assessment in the summary below. Observe sexual abomination seems to be a society's, or a city's, or a nation's final disregarding of God. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her, and in her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy, and they were haughty and committed abomination before me. That's you want a bigger picture of what was wrong with Sodom and Gomorrah?
Right.
That's it. Here's a show, I don't know if you ever heard of it. Don't admit it here. It's by Here TV. It's like Netflix or something. Original show will explore what it means to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. In their own words, this is their own words to promote their show. Los Angeles is more than palm trees in Hollywood. It is a sprawling, diverse megalopolis whose residents hail from all over the world. Queerness in LA is more than just drag queens and Calvin Klein. It is something chameleon-like, something that's as diverse as the people who live it. Falling for Angels, that's the name of the show, Pastor Dan, recognizes all this and sees in the city of LA an opportunity to tell stories of queer people in all their complexity, with every episode tackling a different LA neighborhood and directed by a different queer person of color. Now that should blow you away. Mm-hmm. And why are Hollywood actors called stars? Stars, of course, for you Bible thumpers, is another word for angels. And we prove that in the notes. We're not going to do it here. It makes so much sense to refer to certain kinds of celebrities as stars. This is their own words. At their heights, these people inspire the rest of us. I'm talking about your LA superstars. They shine larger than life above us and around us. They suggest in their insistent omnipresence a certain order to the world. To see the stars, or more specifically to believe in them, is to endorse the notion that the people before us on our screens, far from us and yet so close, exist, as the author Jeannie Bassinger puts it, on some plane between ours and that of the gods. That's for the Atlantic. And the Atlantic is a very intellectual magazine. It's not some tabloid. This is just for your information. Los Angeles, it means the angels, right? And it means in the town of Our Lady, Queen of Angels. I think that's kind of interesting. This is, we're not going to keep this up there a long time, but this is what's in, shows how fast the homosexual agenda has hit the world.
Right.
Look, it's happened in the last 5 years, basically. It was in the closet, and now they're passing laws in the Supreme Court for it.
Yes.
And it's not just in America. America's actually late, right? But these are the churches. I mean, for some reason, this doesn't work. The laser won't work on a film.
This is the laser right here.
Yeah.
It's not working? Oh, you're right. Over here. See the little red.
All right. Well, okay.
Right there.
Will that work on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Just above there.
All right. You know, like the Assemblies of God in 07, 16% of the congregation said it was okay. Now 26%. Let's go. National Baptist Convention has gone from 35 to 54%. Presbyterians have gone up to 65%. United Church of Christ to 82%.
Wow.
Episcopal Church up to 83%. Now that doesn't surprise me. I grew up Catholic and Episcopalian. If you couldn't abide by the Episcopalians' doctrine, they got to lock you up because they just think everything's okay. All right. Anyway, that's something interesting. You could spend some more time on it. But what I'm showing you is the speed at which this is happening. What I'm talking about, the homosexual agenda, has just, it was unheard of when we were children. Even when my kids were children. It was just unheard of. I mean, you know it was there, but there's a difference between it being there and your government starting to sanction it and passing laws and then promoting it. Okay. What is the symbol for the gay agenda? Who knows?
There's a rainbow, isn't it?
Bingo. That's the rainbow. All right, this is another Days of Noah connection, man. It's the largest gay parade in the world, celebrated its 22nd anniversary in Sao Paulo. That means the city of Apostle Paul, by the way. It's kind of like Los Angeles. The Gay Pride Parade took over the city on Sunday, June 3rd, 2018. That wasn't all that long ago. But that's, see, so it's worldwide. This is in Brazil. On Friday evening, the White House was glowing with pride. The Obama administration bathed the north side of the executive mansion in rainbow-colored light to celebrate the Supreme Court's Friday ruling in Obergefell versus Hodges, June 26, 2015, which guaranteed a constitutional right to same-sex marriage across America. That's what I mean about sanctioning it. It's one thing when a city does it. It's one thing when we know what's going on. And I'm not saying going out beat people up or anything like that. Right. But it's another thing when they say it's okay. Yes. There's our White House. They're happy about it. While I was doing this, I got a missionary friend, a pastor friend in India. On September 6, 2018, India, the largest democracy in the world, legitimates homosexuals. He sent me that while I was doing the studies. Right on time. I mean, I was right here to put it in my PowerPoint. So I thought it was interesting. Homosexuals' agenda. Acceptance, normalize, promote, celebrate. That's how I see it. God's rainbow covenant. Another Days of Noah connection. It was his rainbow that he promised. You're familiar with that. We're kind of going to speed through this. This is the token of the covenant. He sets his bow in the cloud to remember the days of Noah, that he wasn't going to destroy the earth again. But isn't it interesting that that's the symbol for strange flesh? Talk about mockery. There it is again. I just have no words for this. Or you're going to find out if you don't get saved, my friend. New Testament corroboration, making contact, but as the days of Noah were, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Don't assume angels are the good guys. It's not just talking about good guys. But though we are an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. There again, they brought this up in the film, but why would he say that? Right. Unless it could happen. No marvel, for Satan himself is transferred into an angel. Angels are always men of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as ministers of righteousness. The great dragon was cast out, the old serpent called the devil, and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. You want me to keep going, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can. Unless you just want to answer some questions first.
Well, this is the post-flood era. We're getting there. Noah was born, and the flood came in 2348 BC. Babel was in 2247 BC, and Noah's death was 1998 BC. I'm pointing out that Noah lived 350 years this side of the flood. Right. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall be in the coming of the Son of Man. Everybody seems to forget this side of the flood, where also the days of Noah, part of it. So, Noah's last 350 years, what happened? We have a one-world leader, Nimrod, construction of the Tower of Babel, and they seek to establish a one-world government. That's what happened. I want you to think about the tower. What was it when God saw the tower? Scripture records that God says whatever men imagined to do, they could achieve it. And the power was to reach heaven. The tower was. What was that tower? Was it a tower like that? Or was it a tower like that? Was it a tower like that? And remember, this tower has to reach heaven. Right. And God stopped it. He says, look, they're going to be able to pull it off. Well, what kind of tower was it? It wasn't a building. It had to be something more than that. And they didn't have anywhere near the technology they had before the flood, but they're trying to get it back. All right, this is the United Nations again. We're going to just skip through that, but be safe that, and be confident that the UN is taking care of outer space. Conclusion. The days of Noah includes very consequential alien visitors from the heavens. They're angels. These beings cohabitated with particular chosen human women. God refers to this unholy relationship as going after strange flesh. This union produced corrupted offspring called giants. Both the angels and giants assumed leadership roles within religious and governmental organizations. It appears they orchestrated scientific experiments dealing with animal and human genetics. The angels and/or giants corrupted the gene pool of all flesh. By correlating scriptures in 2 Peter and Jude, it seems likely that widespread homosexual environments existed during the days of Noah. Strange flesh, gender confusion contributed to God's assessment that all flesh was corrupt. In addition to these developments, all men and women became morally and spiritually evil. Ultimately, human religion glorified and worshiped the creature rather than the Creator. God gave up Noah's generation. Look, I want you to take a look at Romans 1:21 through 32. God's speaking historically about a nation that he gave up, about a group of people he gave up.
Right.
I believe that's a historical commentary on the days of Noah. God has not given us up. In other words, anybody out there you see, I don't care if he's even dressed like Mr. Fabulous, he can still get saved. But God's speaking about a generation in Noah, Romans 1:21 through 32, that's so corrupt. Read that. And it ends with homosexuality.
Yes.
And he gave them up. Something to think about. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. Noah witnessed a serious attempt to create world government under one individual. Mankind also sought to build a tower reaching heaven, outer space. God stopped the progress of the tower only after declaring mankind could accomplish whatever they imagined to do. One of the most amazing verses in the Bible. Therefore, we may conclude their imagined purpose for extending into heaven was and is evil. As our present era quickly approaches Jesus' second advent, likeness to the days of Noah manifests in many ways. The religion of evolution deifies the creature and science. Thus, God is denied and replaced with human achievement and his ever-evolving greatness. You like that? Like the sound of that? All right. Science also commits to genetic programs affecting all areas of human existence, both botanical, biological, and animals. Present-day towers launch rockets, satellites, and laboratories into outer space. The world, through the efforts of the United Nations, steadily moves toward a one-world government. A single leader is eminent. Morally and spiritually, humanity descends ever deeper into sin. The homosexual agenda has swept into world culture at a staggering pace. The Bible records numerous incidences of men and women encountering angels, giants, spirits, and devils. The Bible also warns that evil beings involve themselves with mankind at numerous levels, religiously, psychologically, and physically. Such encounters increase as the second advent approaches. To dismiss all alleged alien encounters as nonsense or mental illness ignores biblical history and even prophetic warning.
Right.
As the church age draws to a close, satanic forces prepare to deceive the world on a massive scale. Supernatural deceptions manipulate governments preparing for the final world leader, Antichrist. Ever since Israel returned in 1948, UFO sightings have increased along with wars, earthquakes, and social deviance of all kinds.
Yes.
Signs and lying wonders are promised. Exactly what those lying wonders are still undisclosed, at least to the general public. We haven't even talked about Israel's connection to this, but it's there.
Amen.
It's there. In general, the general population did not witness the devils and spirits who contacted and even possessed several persons in the New Testament. It means the majority don't know.
That's right.
Nor does Scripture tell us how widespread or how many angels contacted humans during the days of Noah. We don't know. The point is that these alien contacts with human beings happened. And Jesus assured us that prior to his second coming, it happens again.
Right.
Now, here's the altar call, if you will, of this. For those persons who have suffered otherworldly encounters of any kind, and there's stuff just as bad as an alien encounter with a human being can mess you up. Understand that no experience, no matter how distressing, need define one life. No matter the magnitude or the terror of the experience, Jesus Christ provides salvation, peace, and restoration.
Amen.
Be assured that no matter what you have been through, if you call on the Lord Jesus Christ to save your soul, he will do it, and from that moment on, you are under his protection.
Amen.
And in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evidence of perdition, but to you of salvation and that of God. For unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ, not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his sake, in whom you also trusted after that you heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, in whom also after that you believed, you were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. And if you shall confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus, and thou shalt believe in thine heart that God has raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen.
Beautiful.
That's a long presentation, I know. But I could say anybody who just asked me for it, I just Google Joseph Dulmage or go to Facebook and get it, or from Pastor Dan, I'll give you that PowerPoint. And you can do what you can add to it, delete to it, whatever you want. Give it to another pastor. I really do think that we should, the basis of this, your real promotion of this is going to be through technology. It's not going to be people coming.
Right.
But if you can put it on a web page or
Yeah.
a resource page for this, that's what we need to do.
Sure.
Thank you a lot for listening.